Hey guys, this is update number 3 with my tiny book funnel, and we have developments. But before we get into that, I want to share a quick story. Back in 2015, had just been living in France for 3 months, and we couldn't continue there, and we needed to go back to England, and we were staying with John's dad. And I had this human design consultation with this guy called Christopher. And I was like lamenting about how I didn't like anything that was going on in my life at the time, particularly their living arrangements. It was driving me a little bit nuts living with my father in law. Anyway, he heard everything I had to say. And then he said something like, Danny, what you need to do is focus on what is happening rather than what isn't happening. And I thought, okay. And it didn't sound very human designy thing to say, but it was actually quite obvious. And he said, what is happening is you're not happy where you are right now. You want to get out of there. And you've just told me that you've seen this co-working retreat in Koh Samui, Thailand, that you would love to go to, but you don't have the money, and your husband's offered to pay for the whole thing and airfares, and you're declining his invitation. And he's like, this is what's happening in your life. And I'm like, hmm, true. Cut a long story short, I went to Koh Samui. I went to this retreat. I had a ball. I met this guy called Jan Stewie from Germany, introduced him to human design. He went on to be and is one of the biggest human design knowledge keepers in Germany. So somehow I was playing a role in his journey. And I came back from that trip being very clear about what I wanted to do next. But I was thinking about that today because I have found myself thinking a lot about the things that aren't happening in my business that I want to happen. And somehow that it dropped into my mind about focus on what is happening. And I'm like, right? Because there's actually some really great things happening. It's just that I'm not focused on them. And so I'll be sharing some of those things in a moment. But what I decided to do is I created this little jar. This is called my What is Happening jar. And every time something really cool happens, like someone buys something from me, someone um, responds to one of the emails of this little email sequence that I've just created, I put a note in there and I'm going to read them at the end of the week. And you might like to do something like that too. So you can stay anchored in what is happening, the good things. And I think we all know that when we do focus on and be grateful for what is happening, then more of that tends to come in and flow into our lives. All right. So to the book funnel. Since I updated last week, there has been, let's see, 11 more people have purchased the book, and 5 of them actually bought the add-on, which is the 1 hour training, which is my How to Market Quietly and Still Be Successful little training series. Now, what's interesting about that is these people were not from my email list. They were basically fresh people. And it was just interesting to see how the number of people that took up that offer was just significantly different than the week before when it was only really my email list that knew about it. But I did say last week as well that a number of the people who had purchased the book last week, they already had that training or they'd purchased something more extensive from me. So they probably didn't feel like they needed it. But I do want to say this training, How to Market Quietly and Still Be Successful, honestly, it's one of the best creations I've ever made. It gives you such a potent, powerful, real taste of the potential of quiet marketing, but not only potential, it gives you things to go away and actually do that it can change so much for your business. So if you've ever seen that, or if you go and actually buy my book and you see that as an add-on, I would say just get it. I should be charging way more for this little thing, but I wanted to like bring the price right down so that it gives people a really nice taste of my work and the concepts and the principles of quiet marketing. So what else? The other thing that happened since I last gave you an update is I decided to create another little funnel for my recent creation, which I've called the Lay of the Land report. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about this, what happened is back in June, I'd been noticing for a month or two that sales had slowed quite a bit. And I had assumed that it was just something to do with me. I'd been changing my offers and really bringing my business more into alignment with who I really am. And I just thought, well, I guess there's this natural falling away or something. There's this space in between before the new structure and things arise. So but then I started hearing other people talk about a change in buyer behavior, and I was like, oh, so maybe it's not just me. That caused me to send out a survey to my list. 97 people responded in a couple of days, and then I turned those responses into a really useful report, and now I make that available for sale. So if you haven't heard me talk about that, I would check it out, especially if you have noticed that there has been a slowing in sales. This report really tells you what this change is, what people are no longer willing to spend money on, which they did before, and what they look for now before they buy. And they're just, a lot of it is to do with offer design, actually. So do check that out if that's of interest. Now, in terms of the one-on-one upgrade that's also in this little funnel, no one has actually upgraded to that as yet. But hey, it's still early days, so we'll see what happens. So that is my update for this week. I'd love to hear from you if you have read the book or if you have any questions about what I'm creating here and what's happened so far. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments. Bye for now.